to think I've ever got what I've wanted.
You're a princess.
Exactly.
This is a review of Becoming Elizabeth, a show that is dedicated to Elizabeth before she became queen. And when I saw that they wanted to do a show on that, I was really excited because I do think there is not enough research and enough books and enough shows that shows Elizabeth before becoming queen, that we don't really understand her fully if we don't look at these years of her learning from her stepmothers, but also her sister. So I was extremely enthusiastic. And in this show, I have to say, most of it, I found it really well done. I love the dialogues, I love the acting, but I have some criticizing to say as well about the show, do not worry. But also, I think what I really love is the fact that it shows us Elizabeth as a way we wouldn't see her. Now, between you and me, I'm going to be honest with you, it is not the Elizabeth that I know from her writing, even prior becoming queen. And for me, it's not the depiction or the image I have of her. And I'll discuss that as well. And I'll tell you what I think of her. The way I have like kind of structured that video for you to be able like to watch and to relate to it, I think better, is to look at first, the thing that made me the most uncomfortable is obviously the relationship between Thomas Seymour and Elizabeth. Then I would like to talk a bit about the Katherine Parr here and her own kind of representation in that show and what I think about it. Then I would like to move to the siblings, so Mary, Elizabeth and Edward, and sometimes even Lady Jane Grey, the cousin, and discuss the dynamic, the scenes, and then I will tell you who was my favorite character in this show and why, and I'll make actually even a strong claim. So yeah, please watch it until the end.
Sir! Your stepmother and I, we forbid this.
Okay, this is a very difficult scene to watch. What's really well done, though, is the fact that it is kind of a scene that we have in primary sources. We have testimonies from Catherine, who was the governess of Elizabeth, who was, had spent, so much time with her since she was a little girl, especially after the death of Anne Boleyn. And so we have this woman who looks after Elizabeth. And here we have that scene, and she reported that scene when there's going to be a trial against Thomas Seymour for treason. When you read a paper, you read a manuscript, and you can imagine things, but it's not as clear. I mean, unless your imagination is very good, and sometimes for me, honestly, it can be, and I can cry when I do my own research. Please don't judge. But here I never really put it, I never put the words into images, do you see, like into imagination. And here that scene for me does that. It's like, and it's so hard to watch. You see, but I think what's well done is that you see how Katherine Parr is playing. It's like she's, and I think it's what actually happened. She's like playing into the game of her husband. We see her husband look at the eyes of this man, like look at the way he looks at Elizabeth. He is a sexual predator. He is interested in her. You have this kind of very, like uncomfortable scene, and you look at him and you feel like, as a young woman, you might have seen, or even as not just young women, but you might have seen that, that look that would freeze you because that it's unwanted. And you can see the face of Elizabeth, who's like completely lost. At the same time, she feels, oh, Catherine, my stepmother, the woman that I consider as close as what a mother could be to me, is playing that role in everything, and we're laughing and it's funny. But then at the end, they've ripped off her clothes. And it's like, why and how? Like, how would you let that happen to a 13, 14, 15-year-old? I found it so sickening. This scene for me is so sickening, but also at the same time, I want to say well done to the show, because they really put one piece of contemporary evidence, a primary source, and made it into a great scene. It explains also why Kat Ashley might have witnessed it, because she's there, and I think it's so brilliantly done. But it shows like the dynamic between Elizabeth and Thomas, the kind of power play he has, a kind of interest he has in her, and the kind of like, this is not, this is not right. The fact that then, things are going to be used against him politically, it's another thing. But what happened, this type of relationship, he's married, he has these teenage girls, Lady Jane Grey and Elizabeth at home. His attitude, his behavior is despicable, and it's not right. Whatever kind of man he might be, before, after, or, after he's going to die, but, before, or if he has other qualities, that part of his life, that part of history, that part of his personality is wrong. We have a moment where we have Elizabeth smiling and being, kind of like, so it almost shows in this show that what I don't like is the fact that we almost have this young girl, like, consenting to what's happening, and I think that's far from the truth. It's like kind of an interpretation that could work, but at the same time I think it is a bit dangerous to go down the line that a young girl would like so much the attention on her, and I think here we have to be very careful if we're going to go down that line, go down that route, because it doesn't seem right. And why do we know, like in terms of history, why it's not right? We know because when Elizabeth is finally like taken away from Katherine Parr and Thomas Seymour's house, and she stayed with Anthony Denny's house, she writes a letter. She literally says, do not let him close to me. She doesn't want to see him. Like, she makes it clear she doesn't want to see Thomas Seymour anymore. And so I think here we have a clear kind of proof that it was not consent. There was no consent from Elizabeth's perspective. And so I think the show like plays with a very thin line, a very delicate line, where I don't really see her, like, I don't like seeing her like blushing and being like, all that type of things. I think it's a very dangerous line here.
You've had enough time to decide? Lord, even now I see you dancing. You are in two minds still. Make your choice. The apologetic sinner or defiant husband. Choose the wife or choose the girl.
The scene between Katherine Parr and Thomas Seymour here is absolutely brilliant. Because also, like, what I like in this show is that the characters are not one dimension, right? They have different facets of their personality. And though I don't appreciate all the personality of, like, Katherine Parr and how she's represented, because it's not, again, the image I have of her, from primary sources, I do appreciate that here it's much closer to what she would have been. And here I love that she completely calls him out, and she's basically saying what he had in mind. You no longer want, the former wife of a king, you want the princess. And he doesn't really reply. He's kind of defensive, and he's like, trying to defend himself, but he has nothing to say that can really defend himself, because I think she was spot on, and she said what he wanted. And again, that's where it's going to go down really badly for him, because his pursuit for ambition, maybe he really liked Elizabeth, I really don't know. But regardless, I think the pursuit of ambition, like of thinking of, oh, I could marry Elizabeth, become King of England. I mean, we show that kind of ambition with that man is real, and that would explain his downfall. Now, what really interests me in that show is not really the relationship between Thomas Seymour and Elizabeth, because I think when you really look at the show, it is really just one part of it. What's very interesting, however, is the dynamic between Elizabeth and her siblings, and also her cousin Lady Jane Grey. So obviously some liberties have been taken, but also I just think that the representation they have of Elizabeth really clashes with the one I have, especially from her at a young age. I think they made her a bit too naive, almost like borderline stupid things she said to her cousin, like the Lady Jane Grey. Like the scene is absolutely unbearable to watch for me.
They came to me, to our house, after the Lord Thomas was arrested. They questioned me. They hoped I would say that you
want me to stand here and tell you what it's like to be held by a man? To see him naked? to undress in front of one and let him touch you. I'm afraid you'll have to use your imagination, for I do not know. If you thought you were lying on my behalf, you'd be relieved to know that you were not. I owe you nothing.
I have kept your secret.
You're a little late to send me to the block for this, Jane, but you may try.
I don't desire it. I don't threaten nor blackmail. I just wanted...
Benefit from my knowledge, seeing as I'm the only whore you thought you knew.
It's just that I do not see Elizabeth being so bold, being so unkind as well, and not realizing that she's really walking on thin ice. Elizabeth was smart from day one. Like, she was extremely smart. She learned, and she was forced to learn to be even smarter really quickly. So I think it really doesn't work the way she's talking to Lady Jane Grey at all. It really doesn't work, and it's actually quite annoying to watch. I think here it really doesn't show the dynamic or the relationship well between Elizabeth and Jane Grey, though we will never really know how close they were. I really believe that here we don't have a real glimpse of what actually happened or their actually relationship dynamic. And I think that's the problem with the show. It's the representation of Elizabeth as a princess is a bit superficial. I think all of the characters are quite well thought of. But not the one of Elizabeth, which she is this naive girl who's gonna want a relationship with Thomas Seymour, who's gonna want all of this. When she speaks, she just doesn't very sound smart and astute, and she truly was. So that's kind of a bummer when you really look at the show. It's like the scene where she says, "I want to be queen," and I can see that, and it doesn't seem right. I don't think she would have dared saying anything like that in presence of John Dudley. I think it's quite good that she tries to show ambition, but I don't think it's done well. What I love in this show is the relationship that is shown between Mary and Elizabeth and Edward. I think that's really well done. I think it's very moving. The scene where Edward asks Mary to convert to Catholicism, you can see how difficult it is, even for him to ask him. He's like,
"Please. Please, Mary."
It's quite beautiful because we have Mary here that is extremely strongly Catholic, but which means that Catholicism is more important than anything else. It goes above her familial ties. It goes above anything. It's part of who she is. It's her identity, and I absolutely love that. I think also, like, when he gets ill, you also have a Mary who's so loving and caring.
No, don't. Please don't. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? There's no need.
It will all be undone.
What will?
My work.
Please don't cry because of me.
And obviously then it goes really bad when he accuses his sisters to try to basically get his place. So they don't realise how important it is, that he's King of England after all. And we have a little brat basically telling them off. And again, I think the dynamic that they portrayed between Elizabeth, Mary and Edward is just absolutely spot on. And I really, really love the way they portrayed them and the complexity and also the relationships. And the one that is even more complex is obviously Elizabeth and Mary. The relationship between Mary and Elizabeth is so well portrayed in this show. It is so well portrayed mostly because we have the complexity between them. We have, like, I love the scene where they discuss about loving each other.
Your much hated sister.
I don't hate you.
Do you not?
No. We love one another, Mary.
Do we? Do we really? Or are we so ashamed of what's in our hearts that we try to force love into them? For the truth that hits me again and again is that I have no love for you. Do you for me? Don't lie, not after everything.
You make it very hard.
You make it easy.
And I think the dialogues in that show are absolutely spot on, especially when it comes to these two women together. However, what really bugs me in many ways is that we have this amazing portrayal of Mary. I think it's my favorite portrayal of Mary. I think she's exactly how I would have imagined her. Bold, intelligent, confident, brave. But what bugs me is obviously in the contrast we have Elizabeth being naive, a bit stupid, quite weak, you know, and what Mary said.
I am a Tudor.
We both are.
And yet somehow the opposite of one another.
The Catholic and the Protestant.
The virgin and the whore.
And the whore. And that is quite like kind of sad to think that in many ways it is how she must have seen herself and her sister. But though I'm not even sure that is true. I'm not even sure that is true. And I think that here, that's why it's a bit hard, because I love the dynamic of the relationship and how it is portrayed. But as I really don't like the way Elizabeth is portrayed herself, it's very hard to completely be into it, to completely like say, yes, that is so spot on. We have this scene where Mary is like getting so upset with Elizabeth because she's asking Elizabeth to do something for her because Edward wants to marry her to a Protestant. Elizabeth tells her he's doing the same thing to me and he doesn't listen to me, he doesn't care. And Mary gets even more upset, saying like, whoa, you're not even trying. And I think here we're missing, like, we have the portrayal of Mary that being completely making not much sense, and we just have a fight for the sake of having a fight. And I think here that's where it doesn't work, because I don't think that the sisters would have had fight just for the sake of having a fight. But I think the complexity behind the relationship, the fact that they loved each other, but at the same time they're from mothers who were absolute rivals, and you can't forget that. I mean, they have to carry that with them for the rest of their lives, and they did. You know, Mary is the daughter of Catherine of Aragon. Elizabeth is the daughter of Anne Boleyn. You know, whatever you want to say, Anne Boleyn took Henry VIII away from Catherine of Aragon and Mary. That is just what happened, right? And Elizabeth is a product of this, is the reminder, constant reminder of that. And so it's quite... I mean, it's just like, I think the dynamic could have been a bit made better if the portrayal of Elizabeth had been better, basically. Had been someone, you know, someone much smarter, but also much more humble. My only complaint is that obviously this show is called, you know, Becoming Elizabeth, and I don't think the title really fits well. I think it should have been called something else, but even Becoming Mary, because this show is really about Mary. You see Mary being the most intelligent, you see Mary being the bravest. And also there's this scene at the end where Mary is saying that she's not leaving England, she's not going to Spain, she's not going into security because she has things to do. She wants to help her country. You see the attachment of Mary to England.
There's a sickness in this country of poison.
Then I must stop its spread.
And she really wants to take this country back into Catholicism under the Pope's authority. And I think it's so brilliantly done. And I'm so sad that this show only has one series and it's been cancelled. I don't understand why. It's so brilliantly done that I should have a second series. We should have the Reign of Mary with this actress, with the script, because the dialogues are so good, with these people with this vision. Maybe a bit more of a historical consultant of people who have read, you know, and who know Mary so well. Maybe Valérie Chutet, or in the US, who know so much about Mary. But even other, you know, others like Alexander Sampson or something like really like people, or Linda Porter as well, like very people who are experts on Mary, and maybe bring even experts on Elizabeth, because I think during that time Elizabeth as a princess, we tend to really overlook her, and I would love to contribute to that. I would love to paint a portrayal of her that is a bit more, that's a bit sassier, that is less naive and stupid. But overall, this is a good show. This is a good show that I recommend you to watch. And yes, I hope you enjoyed that video and that you enjoyed that review. Please don't forget to leave a comment and tell me what you think about the show. And also tell me which other shows you would like me to review. I have my list, obviously. I know I keep asking you. But there are so many shows that I want to review. So please give me also your opinions, because that matters. I make these videos for you guys. So thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you next time. Bye.